The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Commander Vexillar stepped into the archive facility. His 4 legs moved slowly, carefully, like each step required thought. The Krell veteran was old now. His scaled skin faded to a dull gray instead of the vibrant green of his youth. His multiple arms trembled slightly as he clutched a datapad against his chest. Inside the sterile white room, a young Krell named Dane waited. The historian stood quickly, his skin flashing bright colors of respect and excitement. He had read about Vexillar in the military records. 12 major battles, 3 colony sieges, survivor of conflicts that killed nearly everyone around him, a living legend. "Commander, thank you for coming," Dane said, gesturing to a comfortable seat designed for Krell physiology. "I know this has been difficult." Vexillar said nothing. He moved to the chair and settled into it, his breathing heavy. For 50 years he had avoided this moment. The High Command had asked. Then they had suggested. Finally they had ordered. All veterans must provide testimony before death. The war must be documented. The truth must be preserved. The room was small and quiet. Recording equipment lined the walls, their lights blinking in steady rhythms. A large window showed the city outside, where young Krell moved through their lives knowing war only from stories. They had not seen what Vexillar had seen. They had not done what he had done. "Before we begin," Dane said carefully, "there is a protocol requirement. The Galactic Council insists on human presence for all war testimonies." Vexillar's skin went pale. His breathing quickened. A holographic projector hummed to life in the corner. Light coalesced into the shape of a human male, wearing a military uniform marked with unfamiliar symbols. He looked to be in his 30s with dark hair and darker eyes that seemed to see everything. "Commander Vexillar," the human said, his voice translated perfectly by the system. "I am Captain Jiwoo of the Unified Human Defense Forces. I am here as an observer only. You may speak freely." Vexillar stared at the hologram. His heart beat faster. The human was young, fit, standing with that particular posture that all military beings shared. But it was the eyes that disturbed Vexillar. They were calm, patient, watching, just like the eyes of the humans he had fought. "Can we proceed?" Dane asked gently. Vexillar nodded slowly. His voice, when it came, sounded like grinding stones. "Yes, begin." Dane activated his own recording device and smiled. "Let us start with your early service. Before the humans, tell me about your career in the Krell Defense Force." The question was safe. Easy. Vexillar felt his muscles relax slightly. "I joined the force when I reached maturity. 57 cycles ago. It was an honor. The Krell were the strongest military power in known space. We had never lost a war, never failed a conquest. You believed in the Krell military superiority," Dane prompted. "Everyone did," Vexillar said. "It was not belief. It was fact. We had better weapons, better armor, better training. We had conquered 43 species. All of them surrendered after seeing our strength. It was the natural order. The strong expand, the weak submit." Dane nodded, making notes. "Your service record shows exemplary performance. You rose quickly through the ranks." "I was good at my duty," Vexillar said simply. "I understood tactics. I could lead soldiers. I won battles." He paused. "Back then, battles were simple. We arrived. We demonstrated force. The enemy surrendered. Sometimes there was brief fighting, but it never lasted long." "Why die when survival is possible?" "A logical question," Dane agreed. "Yes," Vexillar whispered. "Logical." The historian glanced at his notes, then at the silent human hologram. Jiwoo had not moved, had not spoken. He simply stood there, hands behind his back, watching. "Commander," Dane said carefully, "when did you first encounter humanity?" The room seemed to grow colder. Vexillar's skin shifted through several colors, gray to dark blue to something almost black. His trembling increased. For a long moment he said nothing. "Take your time," Dane offered. Vexillar looked at the human hologram. Jiwoo met his gaze without flinching, without anger, without anything except that calm patience. 50 standard years ago," Vexillar began, his voice barely audible, "we received reports of a new species expanding into systems we claimed as our rightful territory. The High Command was not concerned. Just another species to integrate into the Krell sphere. Just another inevitable surrender." "What did intelligence reports say about humans?" Dane asked. "They were weak," Vexillar said. physically inferior to Krell. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional. They had no major military victories against peer opponents. Their worlds were lightly defended. The analysis concluded they would offer token resistance before accepting terms. Standard projection, Dane noted. Yes, standard. Vexillar's voice carried something heavy now, something painful. We sent ambassadors first. Offered them the choice. Submit to Krell authority. Maintain your worlds under our protection, integrate into our economy. Or refuse and face military action. What did they say? They refused. Vexillar's multiple arms gestured oddly, a Krell expression of confusion. Not just refused. They laughed. The human ambassador looked at our representative and said their species would never kneel to anyone. That they would rather die. Did your command take this seriously? Dane asked. No. The word came out like a sigh. We had heard such things before. Species always claim they will fight to the end. They never do. Survival instinct is universal. When death becomes real, beings choose life. Always. Dane leaned forward. But humans did not. Vexillar was quiet for a long time. His breathing had become labored. One of his hands reached up to touch his face, an unconscious gesture of stress. No, he finally said. They did not. The human hologram Jiwoo spoke for the second time. His voice was gentle, almost kind. Commander, would you like to stop? We can continue another day. Vexillar looked at him sharply. There was something in the human's tone, not pity exactly, understanding perhaps, the recognition of one soldier to another. No, Vexillar said. I have avoided this for 50 years. If I stop now, I will never return. Ask your questions, historian. I will answer. Dane checked his equipment, ensuring everything recorded properly. Tell me about the first battle. The first time Krell forces engaged humans in combat. Vexillar closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they seemed to be looking at something far away. Something that existed only in memory. The first battle, he said slowly, was supposed to be a demonstration, a message. The High Command chose a small human colony, 5,000 civilians, 200 military personnel. We sent 10,000 Krell warriors, elite soldiers, the best equipment. It was meant to be quick, overwhelming, a lesson to other human worlds about the cost of resistance. What was the colony's name? Dane asked. Keswick 9. The name came out like a curse. I remember everything about Keswick 9. What happened there? Vexillar's skin had gone completely pale now, almost white. His trembling had spread to his entire body. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. We learned that humans do not understand the word impossible. We learned that they will fight when fighting is meaningless. We learned that survival is not their primary instinct. He paused, looking directly at the human hologram. We learned that sometimes species exist who would rather burn than bend. Jiwoo's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or memory of his own. Tell me about the battle. Dane pressed gently. Vexillar took a deep breath, all 4 of his lungs filling with air. Then he began to speak, and the words that came out would haunt everyone in that room for the rest of their lives. The memory came back to Vexillar with perfect clarity. 50 years meant nothing. He could still smell the air on Keswick 9, still feel the weight of his armor, still hear the sounds that would never leave him. We arrived in orbit at dawn, he said, staring at nothing. The landing craft descended in perfect formation. 10,000 warriors in full battle gear. Our plasma rifles were charged. Our armor gleamed. We were beautiful and terrible. We were the Krell, and we had never known defeat. Dane recorded every word, his own hands shaking slightly. The human hologram, Jiwoo, remained still as a statue. I was younger then, ambitious. I commanded a squad of 50 soldiers. We had trained together for cycles. They trusted me. I trusted them. Vexillar's voice dropped. I led 43 of them to their deaths that day. What happened when you landed? Dane asked quietly. We expected chaos. Civilians running, military forces scrambling to defensive positions, panic. Instead, we found silence. The colony was quiet, too quiet. General Thexnor, my superior, thought they had already fled. He was pleased. An easy victory. No resistance. We would claim the colony and report success. Vexillar's multiple arms clenched into fists. Then the shooting started. He stood up from his chair suddenly, unable to sit still. His legs carried him to the window where he stared out at the peaceful city. But his mind was on Keswick 9. They were everywhere and nowhere. Humans firing from windows, from rooftops, from underground tunnels we did not know existed. They had turned every building into a fortress, every street into a killing ground. Our first wave lost 300 soldiers in the first 10 minutes. But you had superior numbers, Dane said. Superior weapons. Yes, and we used them. We called in air support. We leveled entire blocks. We used plasma weapons that melted stone and metal. We advanced through the ruins, killing every human we found. Vexillar turned back to face them. And still they fought. Still they refused to surrender. The room was silent except for the soft hum of recording equipment. General Thexnor ordered my squad to secure the mining facility. It was the largest structure in the colony. Control it, and we controlled the colony's main resource. Simple military logic. I took my 50 soldiers and entered through the main access tunnel. Vexillar sat down again, but his body remained tense. The tunnel was dark. Our sensors showed no movement, no heat signatures. It appeared abandoned. We moved in standard formation, weapons ready, following all protocols. We were professionals. We had done this 100 times on 100 worlds. It was a trap, Dane said. Yes, but not like any trap we knew. 30 meters into the tunnel, the ceiling collapsed. Not from structural failure. The humans had rigged it with explosives. Tons of rock fell on the front half of my squad. 25 soldiers died instantly. I was in the back. I survived. Vexillar's skin shifted to a dark mottled gray, then the gas came. The humans had filled the tunnel with explosive gas from the mining equipment. One spark and the entire tunnel became fire. I lost 8 more soldiers in the explosion. The survivors, we ran back toward the entrance, but the humans had sealed it. We were trapped. How did you escape? Dane asked. We did not escape, we fought. For 6 hours we fought in those tunnels. The humans knew every passage, every turn, every hiding place. They appeared, fired, and vanished. My soldiers, bred for war, trained for combat, died one by one in the dark. The human hologram finally moved. Jiwoo shifted his weight slightly, his face showing the first sign of emotion. It looked like sadness. There was a human, Vexillar continued, his voice distant. A miner. His name was Tae-young. I know because he told us. He stood in a corridor alone, one human with a mining tool converted into a weapon. He held that corridor for 6 hours. One human against trained Krell soldiers? Dane sounded skeptical. Yes, one human. He knew that corridor. He had worked there for years. He knew where to shoot to cause cave-ins. He knew where gas pockets were. He knew how to make every centimeter cost us blood. Vexillar looked at his hands. We finally cornered him. He was wounded, bleeding. His weapon was empty. We thought he would surrender. Did he? No. He had strapped explosives to his body. Mining charges. He looked at us and smiled. Then he said something in his language. The translator said it meant for humanity. Then he detonated himself. Killed 7 of my remaining soldiers. Brought down another section of tunnel. The room fell silent. Dane stopped writing. Jiwoo closed his eyes briefly. We made it out eventually, Vexillar said. 12 of us. 12 out of 50. We emerged to find the battle still raging. The colony was burning. Humans were still fighting. Not retreating. Not surrendering, fighting. How long did the battle last? Dane asked. 3 days. 3 days of constant combat. The humans had no heavy weapons. No armor, no air support. They had mining tools and personal firearms and absolute refusal to give up. Every building had to be cleared. Every room fought for. Every human killed because not one would surrender. Vexillar's voice became hollow. We lost 2,400 warriors taking a colony of 5,000 civilians and 200 military personnel. The mathematics made no sense. We had superior everything, yet they cost us so much. Did anyone surrender? Dane asked. No, every human died fighting. The last position was the colony command center. We breached it on the 3rd day. Inside we found Colonel Hyun-sik, the human military commander. He was dying. Plasma burns covered most of his body. He should have been unconscious from pain. Instead, he was still transmitting data, still sending information to other human forces. Vexillar stood again, pacing now. I went to him. I wanted to understand. I asked him why. Why fight when survival was impossible? Why die for a colony that was already lost? He looked at me with those human eyes. And he said words I will never forget. What did he say? Dane whispered. He said this was just a demonstration. Just a message. You think you won because you took the colony. You did not win. You paid 2,400 soldiers for one small world. We have hundreds of worlds. We have billions of people. We are just getting started. And by the time this war ends, you will wish you had never heard the word human. The recording devices captured every word. The historian's hands shook. The human hologram opened his eyes, and there was something ancient in that gaze. Then Colonel Hunsik died, Vexlar said, and we stood in the ruins of Keswick 9, surrounded by our dead, and realized we had made a terrible mistake. We had not won a battle. We had started a war, and these humans, these physically inferior, technologically average beings, were going to make us pay for every single world we tried to take. Vexlar turned to look directly at Jiwoo's hologram. The colonel was right. You were just getting started, and we should have listened. We should have stopped. But we did not. We were Krell, we were the strongest. We had never lost a war. So we continued. And you made us regret it every single day, Jiwoo finally spoke. His voice was soft but clear. Colonel Hunsik was my grandfather's brother. He volunteered for Keswick 9 knowing it was a suicide mission, knowing the colony could not be saved. His job was not to win. His job was to make you bleed, to make you understand that conquering humanity would cost everything. Vexlar nodded slowly. He succeeded. Dane looked between the alien and the human, seeing something pass between them. A recognition, a shared understanding of war's cost. Commander, the historian said carefully, what happened after Keswick 9? How did the war continue? After Keswick 9, the Krell High Command met for 3 days. Vexlar had not been present, but he heard the reports. Some commanders wanted to withdraw. Others wanted to intensify the assault. In the end, Pride won. The Krell had never abandoned a conquest. They would not start with humans. They sent more forces, Vexlar told Dane. More ships, more soldiers, more weapons. The plan was simple. Overwhelm humanity with sheer numbers. Yes, they fought hard, but they were still just one species. We had the resources of 43 conquered worlds. We would bury them in soldiers. Did it work? Dane asked, though he already knew the answer. No, it made things worse. Every battle followed the same pattern. We would win. We would take the objective. But the cost kept rising. One human world required 5,000 Krell soldiers. The next required 8,000. Then 12,000. The numbers kept growing. Vexlar activated his datapad, showing casualty reports. The list scrolled endlessly. I was promoted to commander after Keswick 9, not because I had won, but because I had survived. They needed experienced officers. Most who fought humans did not survive long enough to gain experience. He paused, collecting his thoughts. The Battle of Arcturus Station broke something in the Krell military. It was a human space station in deep space. Just a supply depot. It had 500 human marines defending it. We sent 15,000 Krell warriors to take it. A siege? Dane asked. Yes, we surrounded the station, cut off all supply lines, destroyed their communications. They had no hope of reinforcement. No possibility of escape. Standard siege doctrine says they should have surrendered within days, save lives. Accept terms. Vexlar's voice grew quieter. They held for 2 months. The human hologram Jiwoo stood perfectly still, but his hands had clenched into fists. How? Dane asked. How did 500 hold against 15,000 for 2 months? Because they were human, Vexlar said simply. They rationed everything. Food, water, air, ammunition. They turned every section of the station into a defensive position. They made us pay for every meter, every room, every corridor. He pulled up tactical maps on his datapad. We lost 4,000 soldiers taking that station. 4,000 against 500. The mathematics were impossible. But humans made the impossible normal. Vexlar zoomed in on one section of the station map. At the end, we breached the final defensive line. We expected to find the last survivors. Maybe 50 humans. Maybe 100. We found one. Private Donghyun. 20 years old alone, he had been the last survivor for 3 days. 3 days alone? Dane could not hide his shock. Yes. He had moved between gun positions to create the illusion of multiple defenders. He slept in 2-hour shifts. He rationed ammunition carefully. He kept fighting because that was his duty. When we captured him, he did not beg. He did not cry. He asked only one question. What question? He asked if the civilian transports had escaped, if his defense had bought enough time for the evacuation. Vexlar's voice cracked. We confirmed that they had. The civilians had escaped 3 days ago. He had been defending an empty station. He smiled. Then he asked us to execute him quickly. The room fell silent. We could not do it, Vexlar admitted. My soldiers, bred for war, could not execute this young human who had fought so hard for nothing except duty. We sent him to a prisoner camp instead. I heard later that he tried to escape 17 times. He never stopped fighting. Dane made notes, his hands trembling. The Krell military was winning these battles, taking objectives. Why did the war not end? Because winning and victory are not the same thing, Vexlar said. Yes, we took worlds. Yes, we destroyed human forces. But each victory cost more than the last. Our soldiers began to break. Not physically, mentally, they had nightmares. They refused to fight. They could not understand an enemy that refused to quit. He stood and walked to the window again. I remember a young Krell warrior in my unit. Strong, well-trained, eager for glory. After 3 battles against humans, he stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I asked him what was wrong. He told me about a human soldier he had killed. The human had lost both legs to an explosion. He was bleeding out, dying. My warrior approached to confirm the kill. The human used his last strength to shoot at him. The human missed, died. But he had tried. He had fought to his final breath. Vexlar turned back to face them. My warrior asked me why. Why did the human not use his last moments to call for help? To say goodbye to loved ones, to pray? Why waste it on one final meaningless attack? I had no answer. I still do not. What happened to your warrior? Dane asked softly. He killed himself 3 days later. Left a note saying he could not stop seeing that dying human's eyes. Could not stop wondering what kind of species refuses to give up, even when giving up is the only logical choice. The human hologram spoke. We call it fighting spirit. The refusal to surrender even when surrender is rational. It is both our greatest strength and our deepest flaw. Vexlar nodded slowly. Yes, we learned that. Over and over. Each battle taught us the same lesson. Humans do not quit. Tell me about the turning point, Dane prompted. When did the Krell High Command begin to reconsider the war? The Sigma offensive. Vexlar's skin shifted colors rapidly, a sign of deep distress. We gathered our largest fleet, our best warriors. We would strike at the human core worlds, decapitate their leadership, force surrender through overwhelming display of power. He pulled up star charts. The plan was perfect. We would bypass their defensive lines, strike directly at their capital system, capture their government. Classic military strategy. It should have worked. It did not. We reached the capital system. We deployed our forces. We prepared for the final assault. Then Major Subin's Special Forces unit infiltrated our command carrier. Dane leaned forward. How? Your security should have been impossible to breach. Humans specialize in the impossible, Vexlar said bitterly. Subin and her team of 12 humans somehow bypassed our sensors, our guards, our security systems. They reached the bridge. We thought they were there to assassinate the Admiral, to sabotage the ship, to steal data. What did they do? They delivered a message. On every screen in the fleet. Every ship. Every soldier. A message from the human government. Vexlar closed his eyes. The message was simple. It said that humanity would never surrender. That we could take every human world, kill every human soldier, and they would still resist. That they would fight from the ruins. Fight from space. Fight until their species was extinct. But they would make sure the cost destroyed us too. A bluff? Dane suggested. No, that was the terrifying part. It was not a bluff. Subin's team proved it. After delivering the message, they fought their way off the command carrier. 12 humans against thousands of Krell. They should have died. Instead, they escaped, stole a fighter craft, destroyed 2 of our ships on the way out, vanished into deep space. Vexlar's multiple arms spread wide in a gesture of helplessness. The Admiral ordered the fleet to withdraw, to regroup. But word spread. Our soldiers had watched 12 humans humiliate our entire fleet, had seen them fight impossible odds and survive, had heard their message, and they began to understand. This war would never end. Not with human extinction. Not with Krell victory. It would just continue, consuming both species until nothing remained. What did you do? Dane asked. I returned to my homeworld on leave. I tried to sleep. I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw human faces. Human soldiers fighting despite impossible wounds. Human civilians choosing death over surrender. Human children looking at me with defiance instead of fear. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I went to see a mind healer, told them about my dreams, my fears. They said I was suffering from combat stress, that I needed rest, but rest did not help. The dreams got worse. I was not alone. Hundreds of Krell warriors reported the same symptoms. We were breaking, not from losing, from winning. Jiwoo spoke again, his voice carrying weight. My people have a saying. Victory at any cost is just another way of saying defeat. You were learning that lesson. Vexlar nodded. Yes, we were the strongest military in the galaxy. We had the best technology, the most soldiers, the greatest resources. But humans had something we did not understand. They had will, and will, we learned, can defeat strength if the will refuses to break. Dane saved his recordings, making sure every word was captured. Commander, we need to talk about the final battle, the one that ended your combat service. Vexlar's skin went completely white. His trembling became violent. He looked at Jiwoo's hologram with something like terror in his eyes. Redoubt Fortress, he whispered. You want me to talk about Redoubt Fortress? Yes, Dane said gently. When you are ready. Vexlar sat down heavily. All his years seemed to press on him at once. The silence in the interview room stretched for several minutes. Vexlar sat motionless, his multiple arms wrapped around himself. His breathing came in short, sharp gasps. Dane waited patiently, not pushing, knowing that some memories required time to surface. Finally, the old Krell commander spoke. Redoubt Fortress was supposed to end the war. The Krell High Command assembled the largest military force we had ever deployed against a single target. 100,000 warriors, orbital bombardment platforms, chemical weapons, every weapon we possessed, every soldier we could spare. He looked up at Dane with hollow eyes. The fortress held 3,000 human defenders. Why such overwhelming force? Dane asked carefully. To break human morale, to show them that resistance was meaningless, that we would bring infinite force to bear against any human position, that surrender was their only option. Vexlar's voice was flat, emotionless. The High Command chose me to lead the ground assault, because I had survived every battle against humans, because I understood them better than anyone. What was the fortress? Dane prompted. A military installation in the Outer Rim, the last major human defensive position in that sector. If we took it, we could advance into human core territory uncontested. The fortress sat on a rocky planet, heavy fortifications, underground facilities, 3,000 Marines commanded by Captain Kyung-soo. The human hologram, Jiwoo, suddenly tensed. His calm expression cracked. I know that name, Jiwoo said quietly. Vexlar nodded. I thought you might. The battle lasted 7 weeks. 7 weeks of horror that ended my career and changed the war forever. He activated his data pad, showing images of the fortress, a massive structure of metal and stone built into a mountain range. We began with orbital bombardment, 3 days of continuous fire from space. We turned the surface into a wasteland, melted fortifications, collapsed tunnels, used enough firepower to destroy a city. When the bombardment ended, our sensors showed minimal life signs. We thought the fortress was destroyed. We prepared for a simple mop-up operation. Vexlar's hands clenched. Then my forces advanced, and the humans opened fire from underground positions. They had built a second fortress beneath the first. While we destroyed the surface, they waited below, preparing. How did the siege progress? Dane asked. It did not progress. It consumed us. The humans had years to prepare those tunnels. Miles of underground passages, hidden bunkers, supply depots. They could appear anywhere, strike and vanish. My forces had superior numbers and weapons, but the humans had knowledge of the terrain and absolute refusal to surrender. Vexlar stood and paced. Every day we advanced meters. Every meter cost dozens of lives. Human defenders who should have been dead from their wounds kept fighting. Positions we thought secured would suddenly come alive with fresh attacks. Supply tunnels we destroyed somehow remained operational. It was madness. Military madness. When what was the turning point? Dane pressed. There were many turning points. Each one broke something in me. Vexlar stopped pacing, staring at the wall. 3 weeks into the siege, my forces breached a section of the underground hospital. I led the assault personally. We burst through the doors expecting a command center or armory. Instead, we found wounded humans and one doctor. His voice became distant. Lieutenant Yoon-ji, a human medical officer. She was performing surgery by flashlight. No power, no proper equipment, using torn uniforms as bandages. Performing amputations with a combat knife. The soldier on her table had lost both legs to an explosion. He should have been dead. She was trying to save him. "What did you do?" Dane whispered. "I stood there with 50 armed warriors." She looked up at us. "Did not stop working. Did not beg." She said, "If you are going to kill me, wait 5 minutes. This soldier still has a chance." Vexlar's skin shifted to a dark mottled gray. I withdrew my squad, sealed the entrance, left her to her work. My soldiers asked why. I had no answer. I still do not. Perhaps because killing someone trying to save life felt wrong. Perhaps because I was tired of death. Perhaps because something in me had broken. He returned to his seat, moving like an old being. The siege continued. 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. We lost thousands of soldiers. The humans lost hundreds. But their morale never broke. They sang songs in the tunnels. Songs we could hear through our sensors. Defiant songs. Songs about never surrendering. Songs about making invaders pay. "How did it end?" Dane asked, though he dreaded the answer. Captain Kyung-soo, the fortress commander, sent a communication. He proposed surrender terms. The Krell would allow civilian evacuation. The military defenders would lay down their weapons. No more fighting. No more death. Vexlar looked directly at Jiwoo's hologram. I was desperate to end it. Desperate to stop watching my soldiers die in those tunnels. Desperate for the nightmares to stop. I convinced the High Command to accept. We agreed to terms. The evacuation began. His voice became hollow. It took 2 days to evacuate the civilians, shuttles going up and down. Women, children, elderly, support staff, medical personnel. I personally oversaw the evacuation, made sure it was conducted properly. I thought perhaps this one time, this one battle could end without more death. But it did not, Dane said quietly. No. When the last civilian shuttle left, Captain Kyung-soo sent one final message. 5 words, we lied? For humanity. Then the fortress detonated. The silence that followed was complete. Even the recording equipment seemed to hold its breath. Explosives had been placed throughout the fortress, under every position we had taken, in every tunnel we occupied. Kyung-soo and his remaining 147 defenders detonated them all simultaneously. The entire fortress collapsed. The explosion was visible from orbit. Vexlar's voice broke. 8,000 Krell soldiers died instantly, buried in collapsed tunnels, vaporized by explosives, crushed by falling stone. 8,000 soldiers, and every single human defender. They knew the plan from the beginning. The surrender was a lie. The evacuation was real, but the military defenders never intended to surrender. They were buying time, making sure civilians escaped. Then they killed themselves and took us with them. Tears or something like tears ran down Vexlar's face. Krell did not cry often, but when they did, it meant complete emotional breakdown. I survived because I was overseeing the evacuation. I was on the surface when the fortress exploded. I felt the ground shake, watched the mountain collapse. Knew instantly that thousands of my soldiers were dead. Knew that humans had tricked us one final time. He looked at Jiwoo, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Kyung-soo was a brilliant commander. He knew he could not win, knew the fortress would fall eventually, so he changed the objective. Not to hold the fortress, to cost us so much that we would question if any fortress was worth taking, to traumatize us so deeply that we would fear attacking any human position, to make us understand that even in defeat humans could destroy us. Jiwoo's hologram stepped forward. His calm had shattered. Tears ran down his human face. Captain Kyung-soo was my grandfather, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I am named after him. Jiwoo was his first name. I carry his name in his memory. Vexlar stared at the human. I killed your grandfather. No, Jiwoo said firmly. The war killed him. He chose his death, chose to make it mean something. You were just the soldier on the other side. He was a genius, Vexlar said. A brilliant tactical mind. He understood that humans could not win the war through victory, only through making victory impossible, making it cost more than any victory was worth. What happened after Redoubt Fortress? Dane asked. I was relieved of command, medical discharge, combat trauma. I could not sleep, could not eat, could not function. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fortress exploding, heard the screams of my soldiers dying in the dark, Saw Lieutenant Yunji trying to save a dying soldier. Saw Private Dong Hyun asking about civilian transports. Saw Colonel Hyun Sik on Keswick 9 sending his final message. Vexlar's whole body trembled. The Krell High Command held emergency sessions. Casualty reports covered every table. The mathematics were undeniable. Yes, we were winning battles, but at what cost? We had lost 50,000 soldiers. Humans had lost millions, but human morale remained intact. Krell morale was shattered. Our warriors refused to fight. Our citizens questioned the war. Our economy struggled under the weight of military expenses. So the war ended? Dane prompted. It did not end. It stopped. There is a difference. Both sides were exhausted. Both sides had bled too much. Peace talks began. Not because anyone won. Because everyone lost, Jiwoo spoke softly. My grandfather's final message to you was not "we lied." That was for the detonation. His final message to your high command was different. Do you remember it? Vexlar nodded slowly. Yes, it was sent 1 hour before the fortress exploded. It said, "You cannot defeat a species that chooses extinction over submission. Make peace." The final interview session began 3 days later. Vexlar had requested time to compose himself after speaking about Redoubt Fortress. Dane had agreed immediately, understanding that some memories required space to breathe. When Vexlar returned to the archive facility, he looked different. Not better exactly, but calmer, more centered, as if telling his story had released something that had been trapped inside for 50 years. Jiwoo's hologram appeared again, taking his usual position. The human captain looked tired as well, though holograms should not show fatigue. Perhaps it was just the weight of the stories being told. Commander, Dane began gently. Today we will conclude your testimony. I want to ask about the war's end and the peace that followed. Are you ready? Vexlar nodded slowly. Yes, I have carried these memories alone for too long. It is time to share them properly. Tell me about the peace negotiations, Dane prompted. They were not negotiations in the traditional sense. Both sides met not to discuss terms, but to acknowledge reality. The Krell military was still functionally superior. We had more ships, more soldiers, more resources, but our will to fight was gone. Every warrior who had faced humans came home broken. We had nightmares. We refused orders. We questioned everything we had been taught about strength and victory. Vexlar activated his datapad, showing casualty statistics. In 3 years of war, the Krell lost 53,000 soldiers. For any other species we had conquered, this would have been acceptable. But those 53,000 died in ways that traumatized everyone who witnessed it. They died fighting enemies who refused to quit, who turned defeats into costly victories, who made every objective, every world, every battle an exercise in horror. And the humans? Dane asked. Human casualties numbered in the millions, civilian and military. They lost entire colonies, billions in resources, generations of their population. By every military measure, they should have surrendered, should have accepted any peace terms we offered. But they did not? No, because humans do not measure victory the way we do. They measured success not in worlds held, but in our willingness to continue. And we were not willing. We were broken, Jiwoo spoke quietly. The human negotiating position was simple. We would accept peace on equal terms. No submission. No reparations. No conquered territories. Or we would fight to extinction and take as many Krell with us as possible. Vexlar nodded. Yes, and we knew it was not a bluff. We had learned that humans do not bluff about fighting. If anything, they understate their determination. The High Command calculated probable outcomes if the war continued. Every scenario ended with Krell civilization crippled even if we technically won. He looked directly at Dane. So we made peace. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. The treaty established humanity as an equal species. Independent, autonomous, respected. Everything we had tried to deny them, they gained through refusal to submit. How did Krell society react? Dane asked, poorly. At first, there were protests. Calls to resume the war. Claims that the military had failed. But then the warriors came home. Thousands of traumatized soldiers with stories like mine. Families burying their dead and asking why. Economists calculating the cost of continuing. Everyone asking the same question. What were we fighting for? Vexlar's voice grew stronger. We had fought to expand our territory, to prove our superiority, to continue an unbroken streak of conquests. But humans made us question what superiority meant. They were physically weaker but mentally stronger. Technologically adequate but tactically brilliant. Outnumbered but unyielding. Who was truly superior? A difficult question, Dane observed. Yes, and one that changed our civilization. The Krell after the human war are not the Krell before it. We question things now, we doubt. We consider costs beyond simple military calculations. We remember what it feels like to win battles and lose everything important. A new hologram materialized in the room. An elderly human woman appeared, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp and clear. She wore diplomatic robes marked with symbols of the Galactic Council. Elder Council Member Seo, Jiwoo said respectfully. The old woman nodded to him, then turned her attention to Vexillar. The Krell commander stiffened, his skin shifting colors rapidly. You may not recognize me, Commander, Seo said in a voice that carried decades of experience. I was 8 years old on Keswick 9. My parents hid me in a mining tunnel when the battle began. They went to fight. They never came back. I survived because they chose to die buying time for children to be hidden. Vexillar's voice came out choked. I am sorry. I do not want your apology, Seo said firmly. I spent 30 years hating your species. Hating you personally, though I did not know your name. Hating every Krell for what happened to my world. That hatred nearly consumed me. She moved closer to the recording equipment. But hatred is a luxury we cannot afford anymore. This testimony, Commander Vexillar, is not about blame. It is not about guilt or forgiveness. It is about understanding. About ensuring that future generations, human and Krell, understand what war truly costs. What changed for you? Dane asked carefully. I met a Krell veteran at a peace conference. He was young, barely adult by Krell standards. He had fought at Arcturus Station. He could not sleep, could not stop seeing the human faces from that battle. He asked me why. Why did we fight so hard? I told him because we would rather die free than live enslaved. He understood that. He said Krell feel the same way about their own freedom. That was when I realized something important. Seo looked at Vexillar with ancient eyes. We are not so different. Krell value strength and honor. Humans value freedom and determination. Both species would rather die than lose what makes them who they are. The war happened because we did not understand that about each other. Peace happens because we finally do. Vexillar sat silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had haunted him for 50 years. Why did humans fight so hard? I have heard many explanations, but I want to understand truly. Why choose extinction over submission? Why die for concepts instead of choosing to live? Jiwoo answered. Because submission is not life. It is slow death. Because every human who died fighting bought possibility for others. Because we believe some things are worth dying for. Because we would rather cease to exist on our feet than continue on our knees. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But there is another reason, one we do not speak of often. We fought so hard because we were terrified. Terrified of losing our freedom. Terrified of our children growing up as subjects instead of citizens. Terrified that if we did not resist with everything we had, we would lose everything that mattered. That fear made us strong. Made us fight beyond reason, made us impossible to defeat. Fear? Vexillar looked surprised. But your soldiers showed no fear. They faced death calmly. They fought to the end without hesitation. They were terrified, Jiwoo said softly. Every single one. But humans have learned to function despite fear. To act even when we are afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting anyway. That is what you faced. Terrified humans who refused to let fear control them. Dane finished his notes and looked at all three of them. The Krell veteran, the human soldier, the elderly diplomat. Three beings connected by war and separated by species, yet somehow understanding each other in ways that transcended both. Commander Vexillar, the historian said, is there anything else you wish to add to your testimony? Any final thoughts you want recorded? Vexillar was silent for a long time. His multiple eyes looked distant, seeing across 50 years of memory. Yes, he finally said. I want young Krell to understand something. War is not glorious. Victory is not simple. Strength alone is meaningless if it makes you into something terrible. We were the strongest species in the galaxy. We had conquered 43 worlds. We had never lost a war. And then we met humans and learned that some things cannot be conquered. That determination can defeat strength. That will can break force. That freedom matters more than life to those who truly value it. He looked at Jiwoo. Your people taught us humility. You taught us to question our assumptions. You taught us that being the strongest does not make you the best. You taught us a terrible cost, and we paid with blood and trauma and broken soldiers. But we learned. And we will not forget. Nor will we, Jiwoo said. We learned our own lessons. That war's cost is paid by everyone. That victory and defeat are complex things. That former enemies can become friends if both sides choose understanding over hatred. SEO stepped forward. This testimony will be shared across the Galactic Council. Both species will hear it. Both will understand what you experienced, Commander. What all veterans experienced. And perhaps future generations will be wiser than we were. Perhaps they will choose peace before war forces them to it. Dane deactivated his recording equipment. The testimony is complete. Thank you, Commander Vexlar, for your honesty. This was not easy for you. No, Vexlar agreed, but it was necessary. The interview concluded. The holograms faded. Dane gathered his equipment, but Vexlar remained seated, staring at nothing, processing everything he had said. Later that day, Vexlar walked through a memorial garden on the Krell homeworld.